Hey everybody, my name's TSW, and in this video I'm going to be going through some of the racials in World of Warcraft for Vanilla WoW. With the release of Nostalrius relaunching, I thought it would be best to maybe go over the third most important thing when starting out on a server. First probably being what class you're going to play, second being what you're going to call yourself, and third being what race you're going to play. So hopefully in this video I'll be able to give you some factual information as well as some more or less information and you can make a better informed decision when it comes to making your character. So let's start off with a couple of intro notes. I'm going to link the spreadsheet in the description, and I'm also asking if anybody wants to edit or add things, please feel free to let me know and I can let you have a editable version. And yeah, we'll try and get this spreadsheet to a nice, hopefully more accurate and inclusive state. So let's start off with humans. We'll go through all of the different races, talk about what racials they have and how they can be useful, and try and give more insight into what they do exactly, because it's all very well listing off the racials, but if you don't actually know what that actually means in game, they can be very misleading. And when people say, oh yeah, this racial's really good, how good is it? What does it actually give you versus the others? So that's what I'm going to try and help with in today's video. So, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think in the comments, because it took me ages to make, really. So that's my thumbs up plea. So let's start off with humans. We have diplomacy, reputation gains increased by 10%. Nothing that little time can't correct. 10% more farming, or just do a couple more daily quests and it can be ignored essentially. It's a fun, nice, unique racial. It's something that you can quite easily live without, but if you happen to play a human, it's quite a nice extra. Next we have the human spirit. Spirit increased by 5%, increases almost no HP regen out of combat by 5%, which is still almost none. I linked a WoW wiki or vanilla WoW wiki page so you can see exactly how spirit breaks down as you level up through the ranks, and because I don't have a maxed out spirit using character on the server, I can't really give any more insight other than what is said on this spreadsheet, or on this sheet of this page. Next we have perception. Dramatically increases stealth detection for 20 seconds with 3-minute cooldown. It's between a niche and worthless in PvE. In PvP it has its uses, but for PvE it's pretty worthless. Sword specialization. Now this is the first one that's got a bit of calculation in from the spreadsheet. So, what does 5 extra weapon skill actually mean? Well, it means you have a 0.2% chance or a 0.2 reduced miss on your swings. You have a 0.2% increased crit and a reduction of dodge, parry and block on your targets when you're hitting them by 0.2 each. And obviously as a human this affects your swords one-handed and two-handed, and your maces one-handed and two-handed. Now something that I've read recently on a Nostalrius post was saying that weapon skill means that you are less likely to have a glancing blow, and also the reduction of damage on a glancing blow is reduced. But when I'm looking at this WoW wiki page, I don't see that. It says here, weapon skill above your level times 5, aka above what your level is plus the racial ability. It says here from gear or racial bonuses, affects neither the damage reduction nor the chance of landing a glancing blow. So I don't know if this WoW wiki sentence is wrong, or if one of the Nost warrior guides I read was wrong, but it's going to be one or the other, and I'm going by what the WoW wiki page says until I know for certain. But here's the information, and you can read about it more if you like. Next we have Tauren. So I'm just going to go through them one by one and then do a little bit of a conclusion at the end. So we have Tauren's next with War Stomp, which is a very cool ability. Stuns up to 5 enemies within 8 yards for 2 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown. A very useful ability for stunnable mobs, and it's comparable to Shockwave in Wrath of the Lich King. It's just a really nice 2-second CC. It's 5 targets, so there are very few situations where there are going to be more than 5 targets. The majority of fights are 5 or less, so it's nice, and it just is a breath of fresh air. It's a moment to think when you ninja pull, or if things are getting out of hand, or if taunts on cooldown, just go for a War Stomp. Everything just stays put. You can mark mobs, you can delegate who's tanking what in TeamSpeak. You just have so much more time to figure out what you're going to do. As well as if you're low on health, you can go for a sneaky War Stomp. One thing I will mention about War Stomp is it does have its cast time, and during the cast time you're not going to be able to do your regular avoidances. For tanking in particular, you're not going to be dodge, blocking, parry, etc. when you're casting a War Stomp. So if you're on 10% HP and you've got 5 mobs attacking you and you're wanting to just stun them for 2 seconds, it's probably not good to use War Stomp, because they're just going to hit you and you're not going to avoid any damage whilst you're casting. Next is Cultivation. These profession boosting racials, I personally don't rate them highly at all. It's the same, it's similar to the Diplomacy from the humans. It can help you once in a while. Diplomacy is obviously more beneficial, I'd say. It's only really when you're leveling you can survive a little bit longer without having to go back to the profession trainer. I think it's a good idea for a racial. It's fun, it's interesting, but it doesn't do much. Next is Nature Resistance, and I'm only going to talk about resistances once, so else we'll be here all day. But basically, with the Tauren you get 10 Nature Resistance extra. The 10 points is equal to 3.17% towards the 315 cap for level 63 bosses, or 33.33% for the cap, which is 300 for level 60 mobs. 10 resistance is worth as much as any of the items or enchants you would otherwise replace for extra resistance. An example, this is being an extreme example. You should never see yourself in this situation, but as an extreme example, if you need 10, let's say fire resistance to reach 315 resistance to get your cap, you could use the Draconic Deflector, which offers the 10 fire resistance you need to get the cap. But if you had 10 extra fire resistance from your racial, you could wear literally any other shield in the game. And the Draconic Deflector, as good as it is, there are lots of better shields by miles. So what I'm trying to say is, if you have this extra small amount of resistance on a racial, it means you can be more flexible with your gear. Now, swapping in a level 58 shield is an extreme example, because a shield is one of the biggest, most important items that a warrior tank at least can have. It has so many stats on, so much armor and so much block value. It's very, very powerful. So if you swap out your shield for a Draconic Deflector, you're going to be losing so many stats. It's better if you think about it. I mean, it's never going to be for that many stats ever. It's going to be more likely to be like, I don't know, like an enchant here, or maybe you can swap your neck or ring. It's not going to be a huge stat change. With that said, nature resistance is barely used ever. I think there's a fight in AQ that uses nature resistance. Some resistances are certainly more useful than others, but none of them are must-have, and none of them are going to be detrimental to your raid. Resistances are often just nice extras. Don't go out of your way to necessarily go for a race with a particular resistance, because there are far better racials to concern yourself about. such as endurance. Total HP increased by 5%. So with these tanking racials, what I've done is I've sorted them out into 3 sections. One with 70% reduced damage from armor, one with 60% damage from armor, and one with 50% reduced damage from armor. With the 70% reduced damage from armor, you're obviously going to be pretty damn well geared. So I always give you 10k HP, and 60% armor, 8k HP, and 50% armor, 6k HP. These values are not a million miles away from where they could be in game. This also doesn't include any talents or special abilities. So we have regular HP of 10,000, obviously with the Tauren's 5% extra, you get an extra 500 health, very nice. And then with 8k HP, 400 extra HP, and 6k HP, extra 300 HP, very nice. So this is the extra health that you get just by being a Tauren, lovely. And just to think about that in another way, we have effective health. So this is your armor and your 10k HP, 60% reduced damage, and your 8k armor, and you can see the effective HP is 33,000, 20,000, 12,000, and you can see that the extra that you're getting is mainly from the extra boost in armor, but health is also very nice when it comes to effective health as well. So yeah, these big jumps in effective health between the different armor sets is mainly because of the armor, but the health definitely helps as well. But we'll talk more about that in the dwarf side of things. So we've got stone form from the dwarves, but I'm just going to ignore that for now because that gets a little complicated. Let's look at gun specialization first. So gun specialization is slightly different to that of the melee specializations, just because it's not as good unless you're a hunter, of course. It just gives you reduced chance to miss and increased chance to crit, both by 0.2%. So that's cool. Frost resistance, which is very nice for Naxxramas, but is in no way a deal breaker. And find treasure, which is just like being a miner, finding mining nodes, except you can only do one at once. So if you're a miner, find treasure is even worse, and at the best of times, find treasure isn't great. Okay, so the important one for dwarves, stone form. Now we're going to glance a little bit over the so let's say what it does first of all. While active, grants immunity to bleed, poison and disease effects. In addition, armor increased by 10%, lasts 8 seconds with a 3-minute cooldown. So let's glance over a little bit of the bleed, poison and disease effects. Basically, if you have any of these effects on you, you pop stone form, the debuffs vanish. You could have a slow on you in the form of a poison, for example, and you're no longer slowed. You could have a dot on you. The dot has disappeared using stone form. And as the tooltip says, you are immune for the rest of the duration of stone form. So if you're playing against a warrior, for example, and they keep trying to rend you, you'll be immune for 8 seconds. And then obviously you'll go back to normal when the stone form buff ends. But so basically, if you have a poison on you, that's going to do, 8,000 damage over 20-second duration or something like that. You can just pop stone form and see later poison. It can be really helpful, and the harder the poison ticks for, or the bleed or the disease, the better stone form is. It's kind of hard to quantify in that regard, but as long as you're aware about it, that's the main thing. So next is the armor. And so basically we've got these 3 armor values here. One with 70% reduced physical damage, one with 60% reduced damage, one with 50% reduced damage. And obviously with the stone form you get a 10% increase to armor. Now at 70% reduced damage from armor, the extra 10% adds on to the 70 an extra 1.962, so that makes the 70 plus 10% armor to 71.962, 60 to 62.2, and 50 to 52.3. And then I've tried to average out the stone form buff time, and then made the average armor gain, or the average percent armor gain. Some of these figures might be a little bit off, which is why I'm saying, if you're able to help improve this, please let me know. So this is the copy paste of the Tauren section. You can see the effective health from the Taurens that we talked about a little bit ago, and then we have the actual HP difference. So this is with the Dwarf buff on. So it says if it were a passive buff, but it's more like when the actual buff is active. We have the 70% reduced damage because of the armor. We have the extra Dwarf armor, and we have 10k HP. We're going to have as standard 33k effective health. With the stone form, that goes up to 35,000 effective health, and then you can see it for the 60% and 8k health, and 50% and 6k health. So these are the effective health the gains you're getting from the stone form. And then with the 3.555% uptime of the buff, you can see that it averages out at just about 100, 50 and 25 for the 3 different gear sets I have. And so basically the potential is the big number, because that's what it is when it's active. And alongside the Tauren, we have these effective health numbers. So with the low gear set, 50% reduced damage from armor and 6k HP, a Tauren gets 600 effective health. Now, in the same gear, a Dwarf will get just above 600 whilst the Stoneform buff is active, which is rubbish with regards to effective health, because that's going to average out at 25 effective health. You're only getting 600 effective health when the armor buff is active, whereas Taurens, they get the 600 effective health all the time, because endurance is 100% of the time. It's a passive racial. But when we look at things like 60% reduced damage from armor and 8k HP, we see that the effective health bonus of endurance is 1,000, but we now see that we have Stoneform pull ahead at 1,200, and then that increases even more when we have a Dwarf in 70% reduced damage from armor and 10k HP up to a whopping 2,300 effective health boost, whereas the Tauren is starting to lag behind when you're looking at only 1,600 effective health boost. But again, the potential of the Dwarf is only when you have the uptime of your stone form, whereas with the Tauren it's all the time. So here are basically I've taken the Dwarf potential divided by the Tauren potential, so we have about 40% extra effective health with the Dwarf racial. Is that worth having the cooldown on Stoneform? And then you see it in, this is more regular gear, this is maybe gear you might have when you're raiding Molten Core maybe, I'm not sure. And you see 20% more survivability only when you're using Stoneform. So I'll do a bit more of a recap at the end, and then obviously it's almost the same if you're looking at 2 tanks, a Dwarf and a Tauren, both with 50% reduced damage from their armor and 6k HP. Kind of interesting how similar it is actually. So next we have Gnomes. Escape Artist, escape the effects of any immobilization or movement speed reduction effect, 0.5 second cast and a 1 minute cooldown. The 1 minute cooldown is really, really nice. It basically means in PvP you can avoid using your trinket a lot of the time, because using your PvP trinket is expensive with a 2 minute cooldown. Very useful to continue movement, and not only removes the slowing effect but also any damage effect from the spell again, which is lovely. For PvE it's not that great, but it does obviously have its uses here and there. A better racial for PvE is, well, if you value intellect, is Expansive Mind. Intelligence increased by 5%. Obviously, for a warrior it's only useful for getting a tiny bit more intellect for leveling your weapon skill. However, if you're a warlock or mage, you're obviously getting the increased mana pool with the intellect, and with other talents as well, you're getting bonuses because of your extra intellect. You can learn a little bit more about intellect on the link where we go through intellect, and you can see I also put in a bit of information from this chart showing you how much intellect you need in order to get 1% critical spell strike. So 60.6 for a warlock with 200 intellect, and 59.5 for a mage with 286. Basically, for a mage and warlock on the alliance side, gnome is the default spellcaster class race. And also as a gnome you get arcane resistance, which arcane isn't that useful, but I mean it's something. And then engineering specialist, engineering skill increase by 15, which I don't rank highly at all, but it's there. So we have Shadow Meld. Activate to slip into the shadows, reducing chance for enemies to detect your presence. Lasts until cancelled or upon moving. Night Elf rogues and druids with Shadow Meld are more difficult to detect while stealthed or prowling. For PvE, I mean the only scenario I can think of it being useful at all is if there's a patrolling mob, you're on your own, you can Shadow Meld and just be in stealth and have the patrol walk past you. It doesn't really do much, if that's all I can think of right now. For PvP, it's better. It's definitely going to be used more frequently, but for PvE, it's not great, really. But I'll tell you one thing that is great is quickness. Dodge increased by 1%. Now, because there isn't a fancy calculator, spreadsheet thing, formulas all over the place, please don't underestimate quickness. If you want to reduce your damage on average, as any race in the game, Night Elf is the top pick. That 1% extra dodge is going to save you against like physical attacks. Obviously, extra armor from stone form or extra dodge from a Night Elf, you're not going to be taking any less damage from spellcasters because that's just going to hit you or it's going to resist. So yeah, when taking physical damage and dodgeable damage obviously as well, quickness from a Night Elf is the best, because over time you're going to have many more dodges, and that hit that was going to smack you in the face for 4,000, 6,000 damage, or probably more likely 3,000, 4,000 damage in vanilla, is just going to dodge and it does nothing. And the extra damage that you're going to absorb from your armor as a dwarf is not going to be as much, quite simply. Again, don't underestimate quickness. It depends on the encounter and your playstyle to a lesser extent. Do you want to have a race like... Well, maybe I'll do this in the wrap-up at the end. Okay, quickness is good. If you want to take less damage on average, quickness is the best. Next we have Wisp Spirit. Transform into a wisp upon death, increasing speed by 50%. Useful for some more than others. Yes, you know who you are. And nature resistance, increasing it by 10. Okay, that's not that interesting. Blood Fury. This is the biggest cop-out on the whole of the spreadsheet, so if anyone has any extra information, I would be all ears. And if you even have a attack power calculator for damage, I would very happily give you credit and pop it in the spreadsheet to help out anybody else. So what Blood Fury does is increase the base melee attack power by 25% for 15 seconds and reduces healing effects on you by 50% for 25 seconds, even though I think it's 15 seconds for both of the buff and debuff. I think the site I got this from is probably wrong. But either way, yes, it increases your attack power, which means that you'll be, as a warrior at least, gaining more rage and be doing more threat. But it does have a really strong downside, which I think is very interesting. It's really interesting, in the best way possible, really. It has such cool ability. It's so awesome as a, racial, but you can quite simply die using it. You need to be smart about using it, and I think that's really, really cool. So your base melee attack power is increased by 20%, 25%, 15 seconds. You're going to be hitting a lot harder. And again, I'd love to have a attack power DPS calculator here to show you exactly how much you can get in what kind of gear. But unfortunately, I don't have it. So you'll just have to take my word that it is a very nice racial. And hopefully in the future, or maybe if you're looking at this video further down the line in time, hopefully there might be a Blood Fury calculator for you, showing you the extra threat you get from the attack power and extra damage, which would be awesome. Next racial is Hardiness. Chance to resist stun effects increased by an additional 25%, which is a really strong racial, but it's way more of a PvP racial than a PvE racial. Yes, you can get stunned in very few encounters, but generally speaking, I mean, if you're a tank and you're getting stunned and you still have aggro, you're going to die because you lose all your avoidances and the boss is just going to start wailing on you and you're going to die. So, I mean, that's the reason why stuns don't exist that often in raids, particularly if you're tanking. So it's not a huge deal with regards to PvE, but for PvP, it can just be it's very, very good for PvP. Obviously. So we've got command. Damage done by hunter and warlock pets increased by 5%. Obviously, if you're not a hunter or a warlock, this is useless. And obviously, if you're a hunter or warlock, high five. Congrats on rolling orc. Next, you have axe specialization, which is, other than maybe the troll specialization and the gun specialization for dwarfs, is probably the worst, just because it's only axes. I suppose the only one it's competing with really is humans. Swords and maces are way more abundant than axes, but if you are playing an orc, you will know that reduced miss by 0.2%, increased crit, reduced chance to be dodge bot parried by 0.2%. You can use this and really think hard about, do I want to replace this axe that I get the axe specialization with for this shiny new sword that does a bit more damage? Is it worth it? And you can work that out here. Okay, let's go over to the trolls. So let's talk about berserking last, because there's a bit more to it. Regeneration. Health regeneration rate increased by 10%. 10% of total health regeneration may occur during combat. Now, if any of you have played WoW, I'm sure most of you have, and you've been low HP, and you've been out of combat, and you've seen the health regeneration of your character. It's not fast, is it? In fact, it's incredibly slow. So take 10% of that incredibly slow health regen and give it to trolls in combat. It's worth mentioning, certainly, but it's very, very rarely going to save your life. I mean, think about a situation where you've gone down below 50 health and you've survived. Then there's a chance that regeneration may have saved your life. But certainly popping stone form, as long as it's physical damage, or being a Tauren, is going to be way more useful than regeneration. It's basically in a whole bottom league compared to endurance, stone form and quickness. But it's worth mentioning. So we've got beast slaying, which increases your damage by 5% versus beasts, which is a pretty cool racial. I like it. This is a list I got from a Wowhead Hunter post asking about what bosses are tameable in vanilla. So here are a list of them. I don't know if it's a full list of bosses that are beasts, but this is definitely some of them. So congratulations, trolls, on doing 5% more damage. Cool. I like it. And then we have throw and bow specialization, increasing your throwing and bow weapon skill by 5. Chance to miss reduced by 0.5. Chance to crit increased by 0.2, not 0.5. I wish it was 0.5. Okay, so last of all we have Berserking. Increases your casting and attack speed by 10 to 25% at full health. It is increased by 10% with a greater effect up to 25% if you are badly hurt when activating Berserking. It lasts 10 seconds and has a 3-minute cooldown. So, what I've done here on the left in this highlighted area is looked at, so you're dealing 100 damage with your weapon as a white hit, you're generating 3 rage, and you have a 1.6 speed weapon, and you're getting 6.25 swings in the 10 seconds, multiply the rage by the swings and you get 22 rage. Add in 10% haste and you're getting 23 rage. Add in 25 haste and you're getting 25 rage. It's not a huge increase in the rage, but it definitely is some. But obviously you're only going to get this when you're white hitting. However, what are warriors doing with their swings if they're not white hits? They're heroic strikes. So looking at this from a heroic strike point of view, it's much more interesting. So if you have the innate threat of a heroic strike, the threat multiplier of a warrior, tank, heroic strike dealing 350 damage. Now this is actually quite a large heroic strike. This is taken from a DPS pass of a speed kill of a Thunder Fury wielding tank on Ragnaros. His average was 350, but obviously this is not taking into account crits, although then again neither is the rage generation side. But let's say, for argument's sake, that you're damaging 300 with your heroic strikes. You're going to be generating in the 10 seconds with 0 haste with a 1.6 speed weapon, assuming infinite rage, 3,176 threat. Increased your haste by 10, you're doing 4,600 threat, near enough, and then with 25% haste you're dealing 5,200. So you're dealing an extra 1,000 haste, 1,000 threat, which is pretty nice. So let's just see the difference between the two, and we have 25% extra threat, which is pretty good, particularly for the start of the encounter, and just generally, you know, the good thing about Berserking is that, unlike with the Orc and its Blood Fury, there's no penalty, there's no extra healing required on you, it's just free haste. And if you're low on HP, even better. So, let's finally look at the Undead. We have Will of the Forsaken. These ones aren't bolded. Not that it makes a huge difference. Will of the Forsaken provides immunity to charm, fear and sleep whilst active. May also be used whilst affected by charm, fear, sleep. Last 5 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown. This is basically the god PvP ratio, for the Horde at least. It's just gets you out of CC really nicely and means that you can save your PvP trinket for CC that you can't use a racial for. For PvE it's not very useful, but it does have its certain encounters where it can be useful. A lot, again, like lots of the other racials. Cannibalize, whilst activated, regenerates 7% of your total HP every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. Only works on humanoids or undead corpses within 5 yards. Any movement, action or damage taken whilst cannibalizing will cancel the effect. 35% channeled heal is essentially what it is. Researching, I found that the best food in the game healed you for 2,550. Basically, you'd rather use the food to regenerate your health faster, unless you have 7,286 HP or more, in which case cannibalizing will regen your health faster, I think, as long as these figures are accurate. But I mean, if you don't always have food and you can save on money or mage food if you use cannibalize instead. It's also really good if you're PvPing and you kill somebody and you can just, you know, crouch down and start nibbling away at their corpse. It's pretty fun, let's admit it. And next, second to last, we have underwater breathing. Underwater breath lasts 300 times longer than normal. And finally, shadow resistance. Shadow resistance increased by 10%. So that is all of the racials for Vanilla WoW. I'm just going to briefly go over some of my highlights and just talk about my thoughts and feelings, really. So with humans, it's really good, and obviously any time you can get 5% extra weapon skill, whether it be, dwarf guns or a bow from a troll or axe from a orc, don't just think of this as being 0.2 reduced chance to miss and 0.2 increased chance to crit. If you're a warrior, you need to have your flurry up as much as possible, and missing a target is really detrimental, and so that doesn't even give you a chance to crit, and then obviously having extra chance to crit on top of that is really, really good. And just from a tanking point of view as a warrior, so many more of your attacks are going to connect. You're going to get more rage because you're connecting with your attacks. You're going to get more threat because you're connecting with your attacks. And particularly in a tanking scenario where damage have to pull back because you're not able to produce the amount of threat needed to stay top on threat, these weapon specializations for tanks are so powerful in that scenario. If all of your warlocks need to stop damage for 30 seconds because the tank is not doing enough threat, because you're playing a Undead tank, for example, a race that doesn't get any additional threat from racials, yeah, you're definitely going to be seeing noticeable threat increases if you're playing with 5 extra weapons skill. Because if all of your warlocks, as an extreme example really, if all of your warlocks have to stop damage for 30 seconds, how much damage is that? That's huge. That's more than any other racial in the game. The amount of damage your raid is missing out on. It's huge. So please bear that in mind. If you've played vanilla before, I've never actually raided in vanilla, so I don't quite know where what's more useful and what isn't, but I'm going to do my best to give you the options so you can play according to maybe your guild's strengths and weaknesses or your vanilla raiding experience, because it's more than mine probably. So if you want to maximize your threat as a alliance, human is 100% the way to go, because you're just going to be connecting and dealing so much more threat with swords and maces basically. Taurens and their endurance is really good. It's the best racial for tanking against spells and magic abilities, because no other racial gives you health, and armor does nothing against magic. You only get a hit or resists with magic, whereas you can absorb the damage in your armor if it's physical. Excuse me. And endurance is really easy. You never have to think about endurance. It's always there. It's always working to its maximum potential. And also, War Stomp is really, really good. I love War Stomp. It's very, very handy. It's worthless on boss encounters because bosses can't be stunned typically, but for trash, for 5-mans, it's a very nice utility. So dwarfs, basically between dwarfs and taurens, do you want to have the maximum effective health for a short and sharp period of time? That's the dwarf. Or would you rather have just a passive extra effective health? That's the Tauren. And again, I haven't raided in vanilla, so I don't know if you would rather increase your effective health for 8 seconds every 3 minutes, or if you'd rather have just 1,000 or 1,600 extra effective health passively. It depends on the encounter. If there's maybe a enrage which isn't a hard enrage, so you're not going to get one shot, but the boss is going to attack 40% harder or 40% faster rather, that's the time when you'd want to have extra cooldowns for that scenario. But I mean, it depends entirely on your playstyle really, and the encounter, of course. Gnomes, yeah, I mean, escape artists can sometimes be cool, but I mean, there's not much to talk about. Obviously, Expansive Mind is a must-have for mages and warlocks on the Alliance side. Yeah, must-have. Night Elves' quickness, again, is so useful. It's basically, if you want to take the least... I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you want to simply take the least amount of damage out of any of the races, Night Elf is the king. Humans and Night Elves, which one would you go for? The question is human, dwarf, Night Elf. Night Elves to reduce the average damage. Dwarves to best take the big swings for a short period of time, and humans to deal the threat. That's how it goes. And depending on how much threat you think you can get with this extra weapon specialization, how much damage you think you can take with the stone form, or how much damage you can avoid as a Night Elf. All things to consider if you're rolling a tank and wondering what race is the best to go for. Orc, it's a shame that orcs only get axes, because from a tanking point of view, I can't recall that many axe tanking weapons, which is a shame, because a lot of the time I feel like if you're tanking as an orc, you're not going to be using an axe, which is a big shame. Definitely as a human, you're way more likely to be using a sword and to a lesser extent maces. But Blood Fury, I'd really be interested to see if anyone watching this can help me in getting some better data for Blood Fury, because I have a feeling it's pretty good. Okay, moving on to Trolls. Oh, my phone's ringing. One sec. That's the problem when you're making videos that last this long. People disturb you. So we have Troll that has obviously the berserking, which is really powerful. I mean, it's not the most powerful thing in the world, but it is definitely useful and it's fun. And at the end of the day, you know, you're playing a video game. You can try and work out which racial is the very best for your character, but ultimately, you know, take all the information here and add it to everything else you want to play a particular race for. For example, humans might have a really nice racial for the increased weapon skill, but maybe you don't like humans as a race. You'd prefer to play dwarf or even gnome as a tank. You know, gnomes are really funny looking if you're tanking with them, and escape artist will have its use every now and then, rarely. Maybe you really still want to play gnome. Like, it's up to you. It doesn't matter what well, yeah, I suppose ultimately it doesn't matter what race you play. All of them can be played at end game, even reasonably competitively at end game. Even if you're PvPing, you could, you know, if you're actually pretty good at PvP, you're going to be able to still be what I would consider successful. You can still be a successful PvPer regardless of what race you actually go by. Yes, it can be marginally easier if you're using a particular race. The same goes for in PvE. For example, if you're tanking as a gnome versus tanking as a human, you are going to be doing less threat than a human. But if threat is not a problem, then you know you've just got yourself a free, awesome looking character jumping around and looking amazing in front of the boss, which is really fun. But obviously if you're running into problems with threat, that's when I would slip into depression and wish I was a human. But I mean, it doesn't matter too much. So yeah, I mean, that's the end of the video. Thank you very, very much for watching. If you watched the whole thing, Jesus, like, go outside. Get a life. But seriously, this spreadsheet and I suppose the video in general took me ages to make. So, I mean, if you're able to drop me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, please do so. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and if you can add any insight or extra information, I'll be more than happy to review it, and if it makes sense, I'll pop it in the spreadsheet to help everyone else out. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys later. Don't forget to subscribe if that's something that you'd like to do, if you want to see more videos from me. Thank you. Bye.